Hello, and welcome to our webinar on equitable services under the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. My name is Carl Koenig, and I'm an Assistant Director in the Office of Federal Programs. I will be joined today on the webinar by
Chantel Lockwood.
Our goal today is to discuss equitable services for non-public schools under the Every Student Succeeds Act or the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. I would like to point out that many of the slides you will see actually come from our partners at the U.S. Department of Education Office of Non-Public Education. So you will see the PowerPoint that will have their logo on it. Slides from the Department of Education, the Ohio Department of Education, will have ours. By way of background, since 1965, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act has required LEAs, or local educational agencies, or to think of it another way, school districts, to provide equitable services to private school students, teachers, and in some cases, educational personnel. This has not changed and is something that has been as a requirement for all of the reauthorizations of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, including the most recent, which is known as ESSA. When the law was signed in on December 10th, 2015, there were several changes that were proposed in the law. One of the pieces I would like to draw your attention to is that there is a comparison chart on the U.S. Department of Education that actually shows everything on how equitable services used to be prior to passing of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act reauthorization as ESSA. It's also known as NCLB, which was No Child Left Behind, and what it is today. Some noticeable points we'd like to draw to your attention is that the sections for Title I used to be 1120, it's now 1117. And the uniform provision that applied to other grants made available under ESSA or ESSA used to be 9501 through 9504. It's now 8501 through 8504. The department has released non-regulatory guidance on implementation for services under Title I. One of the things that they would like to stress out is that if something was not mentioned in their new non-regulatory guidance, the old non-regulatory guidance on Title I and Title IX, the uniform provisions, are still applicable and are something that we should continue to reference as we move forward. So now we're going to talk about the changes to equitable services under Title I. One of the biggest things that has changed is the methodology, in that when determining a proportionate share of Title I funds for equitable services, prior to ESSA, this calculation was done after a district had reserved funds off of the top for administration, district level activities. Under No Child Left Behind, it was for supplemental educational services and public school choice. Under the ESSA flexibility waiver, there was a 20% requirement for improvement practices. All of these reservations were taken before a proportionate share was determined for each participating non-public school. Under ESSA, that has changed, and that is now the first thing that must be taken into consideration before any other set-asides for the district is determined. As this slide talks about, this is something that the reservations used to be taken off the top. Now it must be the first thing that is taken off the top, the non-public equitable service amount. The first thing you would need to do, and you can utilize several of our systems, is to determine the total number of low-income children from families residing in Title I participating public schools. You must then have the overall attendance area, non-public and public economically disadvantaged counts, and then you would determine a proportionate share. This is a calculation in a sample that is provided from the U.S. Department of Education. As you can see, it takes the number of public school low-income children from each Title I served school and adds that to the number of low-income children from participating private schools. You get a total, and in this example, they tried to keep the math very simple in that of the attendance area of all of the participating Title I schools, there was 1,500 students, of which 150 were in the non-public, which came up to 10% of the allocation. How we used to handle this was that non-public calculations were determined on our Title I school allocation PPA list page, which would list the public school that was served with Title I, their low-income counts, which was there in column C, and the non-public count in column D. These numbers are still valid and can be useful when planning equitable services for the 17-18 school year, because you can take the total number of students served that are low income from the public school, which is the sum of column C, and add it to the number of low-income students who are identified in participating non-public schools, which is column D, to get this total number. In this example, it's 1,321. You would take 21 divided by that number, and that is the percentage that the low-income students from participating non-publics make up of the attendance area. That percentage could then be multiplied times the Title I award to give an estimate of what the allocation could be for the 17-18 school year. While we feel this change is has the potential to have a big impact, it should come as no surprise, as this is something the department has been issuing guidance on and has been issuing memos on, and we have been presenting in various arenas, specifically at our OAS FEP conference. We are going to enhance the Title I application to reflect the changes under Title I. The set-asides page will be set up in such a way that this would be the first step. But beyond just changes to Title I, ESSA also has equitable service requirements under Section 8501 for Title I Part C, Title IIA, Title IIIA, Title IVA, and 21st Century Community Centers, which is Title IV Part B. One of the pieces that was removed under this section was the amount of funds reserved for equitable service under Title II Part A was limited to the amount of funds the LEA spent on professional development for its own teachers, or the old hold harmless provision. That has been removed. When calculating equitable services under Title IIA for non-publics, it is based off of the awarded amount for that particular school district. So a school district would take their award for Title IIA, they would subtract any administrative cost, and then would determine an equitable service amount based upon the remaining. This would have a potential to increase the amount of equitable services for participating non-publics if the district had historically only used Title IIA for class size reduction. This is something that you should discuss with your public school districts during consultation. This slide is provided by the U.S. Department of Education as an example. In this example, there are 1,000 students, of which 100 are in a participating non-public, and the district enrollment is 900. It comes out to 1%, 10%. When taking the total Title I award or Title IIA award for this particular grant, it is $1 million. You would subtract off the administrative cost, and you have $950,000 left. You take $950,000 divided by 1,000, you would have a per ADM amount of $950. When multiplied by the 100 students in the participating non-public, you receive an amount of $95,000 for equitable services for this particular district in this example. One of the other major changes that came with ESSA is a provision on obligation of funds. The statute now reads that funds allocated for a school district and other benefits to eligible private school children, teachers, and educational personnel must be obligated in the fiscal year for which the funds are reserved. In essence, what they are trying to talk about is the removal of carryover. Carryover should be something that would be an unforeseen circumstance as opposed to a general practice. This is something that as we go out and monitor, we being the Department of Education here at ODE, we will be looking to make sure that school districts and non-public partners alike have a plan on how to allocate these funds and spend them in the 17-18 school year. If you're thinking of practice to where you have had issues of carrying over funds, this is something that you should really engage with your non-public partners and your public school district partners alike to make sure that they are expended in a timely manner for the next year. As we've talked about, there are extenuating circumstances, but this should be something that should be discussed through consultation with all parties and then discussed with your consultant in the Office of Federal Programs to determine what are those extenuating circumstances. What we are trying to avoid is that while we understand things can happen, we want to make sure that it was not planned for carryover, that it really was something that was unforeseen that prevented the local district from expending the funds that they are required to under the equitable service provisions. A piece that is also not necessarily new but explicit in the law is that the SEA must provide notice in a timely manner of appropriate private school officials in the state the allocation of funds. This is something that we are using the CCIP application for and working to enhance NPDS to show the actual equitable service amounts that are calculated for each participating non-public school for each of the various title programs. This enhancement should be added to NPDS with our production release, which is scheduled for the second week of August. It will be something that will be added in CCIP with the beginning of the application, which should be available on or before June 1st. Additionally, with the notice, we have to provide the amount calculated for each school. This would be accomplished in our application in CCIP for Title I and for Title II. Title III, Title IV, and the participation amount for IDEA Part B. The information will appear in the CCIP on the non-public school page, and as we had illustrated in the previous slide, we will be building a capacity to report that in NPDS. We have to consult with appropriate private school officials, which is something we have been undertaking, reaching out to partners in the field to discuss how this piece would go out, and it is something that would be communicated once the department has hired the ombudsman that will be in our Office of School Choice. This enhancement should cover this piece and provide a reciprocal place to where information from CCIP will be shared. What we are trying to ascertain is if this is sufficient. If there are questions or concerns, feel free to email them to me directly. My email address is Karl, K-A-R-L, .Koenig, K-O-E, NIG at education.ohio.gov. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chantel to talk specifically about the NPDS system.
NPDS is the web system used to collect non-public data. State ADM, auxiliary services, administrative costs, and federal programs are all incorporated into this one-stop shop. NPDS is a web system in your SAFE account. NPDS opened for federal ADM reporting this year in February, and the system will close for data entry on May 24th at 5 p.m. The system will be open for editing consultation guides throughout the year. The agency has developed a dashboard for many of the web systems, including scholarship compliance and NPDS. It is expected more web systems will have this enhancement added in the future. The dashboard is an enhancement that allows you to obtain information at a glance. Along with the charts that displays the status of the state ADM participation forms and consultation guides, there is a section for announcements and a task manager. Clicking a task in the task manager or clicking on one of the bars in the bar graphs will take you directly to that task or search item. If you'd like to learn more information about how to use the dashboard, click the YouTube logo. That will launch a video that will walk you through the features of the dashboard. As already mentioned, NPDS will be open until 5 p.m. on May 24th. At that time, we would expect all participation forms to be in public approved status. If your district has forms that are not in public approved status when NPDS closes, the public district will receive risk points on the Compliance Monitoring Risk Assessment for FY18. Once you're ready to move to the search tool, you can click the 3 lines beside the word Select Program. This will give you one option, Non-Public Data System. Click that link to be directed to the old landing page of NPDS or the search screen. There have not been significant changes to the non-public data system since last year. The main form of navigation is the gray tabs across the top of the screen. Non-public principals begin at the Program Selection tab by choosing the programs in which they want to participate. Clicking the blue pencil will allow editing capabilities. If participating in Title I, the non-public principal will be selecting public districts and buildings for which to report Title I eligible students. The first time the non-public principal does work on this page, he or she will have the option to import the list of schools from last year. If importing the schools from a previous year, it is important to verify there are still students to report to that public building. If there are not, the non-public principal can use the trash can in the delete column to remove the school. This will only work during the federal ADM started status. Once the data is uploaded and the status is federal ADM uploaded or beyond, you can no longer use this feature to remove a school. You will need to contact a consultant in the Office of Federal Programs to assist you. If you have a new school for which to report data, use the Add Public School button to select the correct building. If a non-public school is only reporting data for IDEA or Title III, you will only need to select one public building for each district for which you are reporting, as the eligible students with disability count is reported at the district level only. If a non-public school is participating in Title IIA only, there is no need to create or upload an Excel spreadsheet. You will skip automatically to participation started and the completion of the participation forms. A few reminders about the participation forms. The non-public principal is responsible for completing the participation forms. All questions with red asterisks must be answered. Once all questions on each page of the form is completed, the non-public principal must click the Save button. The status needs to be changed to Participation Submitted and then again to Non-Public Approved. Non-public principals may only select Yes to participate in a title program if they have eligible students for that title program. Consultation is a requirement in the law. If a form is marked non-public approved with no consultation date, the public district must return the form to the non-public as correction needed, consult with the non-public school, and then the non-public principal can add the date of the initial consultation and mark the form Participation Submitted and Non-Public Approved. Once the public district has verified the information on the participation form, they may mark the form Public Approved. Title IV is a new entitlement in the Every Student Succeeds Act. This entitlement is subject to non-public equitability, as Carl already mentioned, and while the U.S. DOE has not issued guidance in this area, we know that 3 areas of allowable activities for LEAs are well-rounded educational opportunities, safe and healthy students, and effective use of technology. A non-public school may opt to participate in Title IV regardless of participation in Title I. Non-public principals can opt to participate in Title IV in the same manner as the rest of the participation forms. From the non-public search screen, you can toggle back to the dashboard by using the tabs at the top of the page. This is also where you find the tab for user manuals and forms, where you will find important technical assistance documents and guidance related to equitable services to non-public schools.
As we've been utilizing slides from the U.S. Department of Education throughout this presentation, one of the pieces that we wanted to point out is that there is a stated goal for consultation. The goal of consultation is agreement between the district and appropriate private school officials on how to provide equitable services and effective programs for eligible private school children. This is the slide that they have used to talk about equitable services and consultation, and that consultation is something that is ongoing. It is a year-round process and should be timely and meaningful. At the time of this recording, we understand that most districts and non-publics have engaged in the first of what we hope are many meetings and discussions about how to provide services to eligible students, teachers, parents, and how to really evaluate a program for effectiveness.
NPDS is always open for changes to the consultation guide. Consultation should be ongoing. The status for consultation guides is pulled over into CCIP, so it is important to ensure the status is marked completed. If changes need to be made, click the link that says In Progress, make your changes, and then click the link back to completed. You will only have consultation guides completed for schools that are participating in federal programs. The consultation guide has been modified slightly to meet the new requirements in the Every Student Succeeds Act. There are now 10 questions for consultation. The electronic consultation guide will be generated when the participation form transitions to non-public approved status. There is a paper copy of the new consultation guide with references to ESSA in the User Manuals and Forms tab of NPDS. Guidance can also be found in the document library of CCIP. Here you can find both US DOE guidance and ODE guidance.
We appreciate you listening to our presentation on non-public equitable services. If you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to myself, to Chantel, or consult in the Office of Federal Programs regarding participation in equitable services under ESSA. Thank you for your time, and if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.